humans' lives are affected or extinguished. Lots of them
Hmm.
because of these conflicts.
This is the equivalent of other countries banding together to attack the US because of Trump supporters.
The CIA made a lot of these like bad groups, by the way.
Where did Osama bin Laden get all these guns? They look a lot like ours.
They're like, wait, made in the USA?
Enable program deep sea diving. Loading parent crossing line. Lower PC roster. Visualizing season 6 of Kitchen Sink Microscopy.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Kitchen Sink Microscopy, your favorite show on the YouTubes. I'm Casey, and that's Eric over there. Eric, tell people what they should wait for.
The song at the end of the episode. We're going to have a clip of a song that we've written because we write our own music. And one of those songs, be it a new one or an old one, will be at the end. So stick around for that, and definitely stick around for the whole episode. Listen to the whole thing, damn it. Don't skip ahead. Jeez. So Casey, what do you want to talk about today? Huh?
Damn skip aheaders. All right. Well, I don't normally pay attention to this stuff, but like this seems like kind of a big one. And it's this Israel-Iran thing. Like, I guess Iran like did something, like attacked Israel or something, and then Israel. No, it was the other way around. Israel bombed Iran, and then they attacked, and now Israel's like, "Oh, UN, please help us."
No, yeah. Well,
And
yeah, exactly. It's Iran. It was
kaboom.
The Palestinians that attacked originally, and that's what they were going after, is the like Hamas and stuff.
Mm.
And then, this kind of suspiciously feels a little. Remember after 9/11 when we went into Afghanistan, because supposedly that's where they were coming from, or where the attackers came from, and then all of a sudden now we're in Iraq. What happened there? It feels a lot like that. Like, oh well, we'll just kind of slip over to here, and those guys are bad too, right?
Right.
Like,
I mean, is the U.S. talking about getting involved now? Like
well,
boots on the ground involved?
Israel is part of NATO, so I mean, it could be. That would be an unfortunate, I guess, turning of the tides or whatever. An unfortunate event if that happened.
NATO is like a strictly European thing, isn't it?
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah. So,
as far as I know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Israel's not part of NATO, but I would imagine they are.
I think just the UN. Well, I don't know. I'm not
I'm
an
not
expert
really
in
up
this stuff.
on all
Yeah.
the interconnections
We
necessarily.
need powers for this. But.
Yeah, exactly. But still, the U.S. and Israel have close ties politically. So obviously that is a possibility, and that would be really bad, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm closer to it than you are, but I don't feel like so close that I'm worried about any collateral damage or anything. But if what you're saying about NATO is correct, then I could see it getting quite complicated. Now I kind of understand why people are wondering if this will be the trigger for World War III. And I mean, let's be honest, if there will be a World War III, it's gonna be the Middle East. Like there's constantly shit going on there.
Well, and you know why there is constantly shit going on there. It's better look behind my shoulder and look for the red dot. It's the CIA. They're the reason. It isn't
Huh.
because of like, I don't know, the culture in a particular country or something like that, and religion or whatever. No, it's the CIA. They're behind almost everything bad that happens.
Hmm.
Um, like if you have your little board with the tacks, the push pins and the strings and everything, it all the lines come back to the CIA and the US, in one way or another.
Yeah.
Um,
It almost makes you think like maybe we should just not have borders.
yeah,
But
we would be
yeah,
less confrontational with each other if that were the case.
easier said than done though.
This is true. Well, yeah,
It just doesn't make any sense to me each time something like this happens. Like why why are humans in the 21st century even doing this shit? Like
you got me.
who's okay with this? Like,
Exactly. Well, you know what it is. I think it's like you were saying. You're not really, you're nearby, but not really like directly connected. I think that's it. Is that the people who cast votes or write their political people letters and stuff like that, and media organizations and stuff. They're not there. They don't live there. They're not impacted by these events. It's just something that's happening over in another place. Um, but for the people there, like, what is it? Israel destroyed like 90% of the homes in Gaza. Like,
Jesus Christ.
it
Yeah,
basically
like
destroyed everything. For
yeah, it does piss me off that the more I learn about this whole skirmish, not to diminish it with a word like skirmish, but I can't think of a better word. Um, the thing that pisses me off most is how the U.S. is like, "Yep, we 100% back Israel on this," and it's because Israel is acting like the U.S., of course, but
oh yeah, for
like,
sure.
but that's not a good thing.
No.
Um, it's quite the opposite. The U.S. is constantly doing dickhead shit like that, like ruining Afghanistan
Yep.
just to spite like a handful of people that like
Well,
what
it's more than that. The picture is
did I say, Pakistan or Afghanistan?
Afghanistan.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All these
Oh,
stands.
Pakistan too, Syria too. Like, I mean, you name it, any country, South
Yeah.
America, all kinds of shit in South America as well.
Oh
The
yeah.
U.S. has got their fingers in the pies all over the place.
Yeah.
Um,
If anyone actually lived at the South Pole, we'd be fucking that up too.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just, and for what? What, what is to be gained? It's like it's
That's a great
disgusting.
question.
It's disgusting. Like, humans lives are affected or extinguished, lots of them,
Hmm.
because of these conflicts. And like, okay, sure, yeah, I don't know if the Hamas attack was provoked or unprovoked, but nevertheless, it didn't, that was wrong. That was a bad thing that they did. But the resulting actions that Israel did was like way over the top. It's way overkill. It's like somebody, I don't know, comes up and slaps you in the face, or I don't know, maybe somebody kills your dad or whatever, and then you proceed to go on a vengeance killing spree and kill their entire family, like anybody related to them at all, just like, or destroy the whole city that they were born in or something like that. Like, what?
I
That's
mean,
so over the top.
for an example, for Americans to wrap their head around this is the equivalent of other countries banding together to attack the US because of Trump supporters.
Yeah.
Like a handful of people that have this particular opinion that might harm the rest of the world or another country in particular or whatever, then they decide to just attack the whole damn country.
Yeah.
As if all the people that live there believe the same thing,
Uh-huh.
live and die for the same thing. Like, it's bullshit.
It is. Totally.
Like, yeah, Hamas might have some pretty fucked up tactics and all that, but they are not the country that they're operating out of.
Yes, exactly. Same thing with Iran too. Like we're told in the US to hate Iran, and Iran is just all evil. It's like, no, it's not. Like the government is kind of shitty there. And yeah, there have been people that have done bad things, but that doesn't represent the entire country, the whole of all Persian people, you know? No, not
Yeah.
at all. In fact, most of the people are just going about their daily life, having their job, listening to the same music we listen to, watching the same shows that we watch and stuff. Like they're just regular people.
Yeah.
That's how it is.
Hamas, Al Qaeda, Mossad, CIA, they're all they're all the same.
With the CIA made a lot of these like bad groups, by the way.
Yeah.
You know, so there is that, and then we act surprised, like, oh, well, didn't see that one coming. Like, yeah, you did. You totally created that shit. You know,
Where did Osama bin Laden get all these guns? They look a lot like ours.
you're like, wait, made in the USA? Like, what the hell? Yeah.
Yeah,
These
like
conflicts. Well, and it is kind of disturbing to me that a lot of the, like, if you look at the state of things, the way the pieces on the chessboard are laid out and the moves that are being played feel a lot like the prelude to World War One, a lot like it. And all we need is some assassination to kick off the World War, and or something akin to that, like some big event, and then everybody's fighting. It's like a bunch of drunk people in a bar, right? And everybody is up on edge and stuff. It's a sports ball game going on, and everybody's fine until one guy spills a drink on another guy, and then all of a sudden it's just a huge barroom brawl, like.
well, and I I would argue that there's already World War III, basically. Like
Mhm.
all this shit between Russia and Ukraine and all the, like the world concern for that. And then, like briefly there was a little blip on the radar with China and Taiwan. I don't know what's going on with that anymore, if
Well, it's
anything.
still kind of bubbling, we'll say.
Yeah. And then all this stuff in the Middle East, which is kind of at like a constant roiling boil. Just every now and then you get like a solar flare going on, and
yeah.
it's like this
Well,
is
and
just the next thing,
there's tons of other little altercations throughout the world currently that have happened recently or are going on right now. And yeah,
It has happened, but has happened will have has happened.
yeah, exactly. Well, you're right in a way. There, World War III pretty much is going on. It's almost like a proxy war, with these different factions, like the U.S. or Russia or China or whoever supporting one side or the other, and feeding their arms, giving them arms or support,
Right.
so that they can fight on their behalf. Like, right, we're not directly fighting Russia.
Yeah. At best, this is a new Cold War.
Yeah, but it's an actual hot war though, that is like just separated by one layer, so that hence
Right.
proxy war. So it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, the U.S. Okay, well, U.S. does have soldiers and troops and stuff in Ukraine, but we aren't like going there and directly fighting necessarily. But we're basically doing the same thing by giving them information, resources, stuff like that, material support, and and so we're kind of at war with Russia in a way, as are many other countries. It's not just the U.S. I mean, most of Europe is doing the same thing. So
yeah. I mean, like, so now that I live in Germany, I have a little bit of like a front row view of the politics here regarding Russia. Like they used to get a lot of their natural gas from Russia. So now we stopped doing that. So natural gas prices are really high, and so on and so forth. And I think we were at some point like trying to supply some weaponry to Ukraine, but because Ukraine isn't part of NATO,
Nope, they're not.
Russia was like, you can't do that, blah blah blah. If you do that, you're violating this, that, even though Putin has violated far more
Yeah.
of those things, and didn't say a word about that. But so basically, he's created this situation where like a lot of the countries over here are kind of afraid to help any further. Um,
Well, I
and
know Germany did supply tanks and like anti-aircraft things and artillery stuff and a few other
I think they did as much as they could before the inevitable threat from Putin came.
Yeah.
And then they were just kind of like, oh, okay. You know, because like, I mean, that's politically the best move you can make, I guess, is try to get as much support as you can up front. And then before you get dragged into it, say, oh, okay, my mistake.
Yeah.
Entschuldigung.
Yeah, yeah. It is. Oh, it's a very, the whole thing's really disturbing because it's like, well, while we're not, most countries aren't directly supplying military forces, as in like soldiers and stuff. Um, the material support is basically allowing more the conflict to continue, and Ukrainians and Russians are dying in the process in huge numbers.
Mm.
Like the the thing that bugs me is like, well, okay, it could have been ended. The U.S. alone could have supplied everything Ukraine needed to completely push the Russians back out and end that conflict before a whole bunch of people have died on both sides. Because it's like we got to consider that. But they didn't. They gave just enough to sustain the conflict, and so it's like, what does that say?
Why?
What's the
Why
goal?
can't it just be like that? Uh, this should have happened a long time ago, but like a condition of being supported by the UN, being a part of the UN. If you have nuclear weapons, you should be morally obliged to put the heat on anybody that's doing shit like this, like picking on the little guy.
Yeah.
Like say, stop that now, or we nuke you off the face of the planet. And if and if they don't, then just do it, and like actually do it. Because if you don't, then of course people will say, you're just showboating. I'm just going to keep doing whatever I do. And I mean, the US already did this, and people didn't really try to fuck with the US for a very long time. So I mean, there is precedence for using that. But I mean, I would rather we just get rid of them all. But
like, ideally we wouldn't
if you're gonna hold on to them, like
it's a double-edged sword.
Chip.
There are good aspects to the huge nuclear arsenal we have, and there are bad aspects. But the problem is we don't just have a few nukes. We have a shit ton of nukes. Like everybody has a shit ton of nukes. And it's mutually assured destruction. If we fire ICBMs at Russia, well, they're going to fire them back at us. And so, well, yeah, we might nuke a bunch of their territory. Well, we're also going to get nuked. And then who knows? I don't know. Other like North Korea might be like, well, it's our time to nuke South Korea. And then like everybody's flinging nukes around. And then pretty soon it's like the earth is a wasteland.
Yeah, but the thing about Russia, it might be big, but it's very centered as far as like the points of true power. Like it would basically take one or two nukes to effectively cripple that entire country.
Well, yeah, you hit like Vladivostok
versus the US. You've got a whole lot of ground where there's a whole lot of power going.
Yeah, well, like if you hit Vladivostok, you hit St. Petersburg and Moscow, right? There you go. Yeah. That's pretty much most of the big stuff in those areas. Yeah, exactly. Russia's mostly empty space.
Yeah, I mean, like the only real thing you have to do is just take out Putin, and if he happens to be in one of those big three places, you've achieved the task.
Well, there's more people behind that, but I think symbolically speaking, if that were to happen, the
That's a
people
huge flex.
pulling
Like,
the strings, yeah, the other people pulling the strings might let them go. Like, oh snap!
yeah, you have all that rubble around you and
Mhm.
radioactive wasteland surrounding you, and it's like, are you really going to keep fighting?
Mhm. Well, and we don't know if Russia's nuclear arsenal is even functioning correctly anymore. Well, actually, we barely know if the US's arsenal is like able to actually blow up. Like, because we haven't done actual tests in what, like half a century or something. Well, no, the 90s, I guess. Well, that's getting close to half a century. Jesus, I'm old.
Shut up.
Yeah. Um, but
It
still,
is
like,
not.
yeah, yeah. No, it isn't. I'm
It's
still
only
in
more
my
than
20s.
halfway.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's like, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, honestly, to these things. I think getting borders and politics and out of our lives would probably go a long way to making it, helping us get along better.
Oh yeah.
Like, not really caring that much about those things, because really, if you think about it, like, who who wages war? You and I don't wage war. We don't have a huge military behind us that we're like, attack, that kind of thing. No, we're like, who does it? It's the politicians, it's the bureaucrats, it's the military industrial complex of any country that does that. It's
Yeah.
sometimes religions in the case of like Iran. um it,
I
yeah,
mean,
those things,
like
that's where
it,
war comes from. It doesn't come from like the average person living their daily lives, that they don't band
yeah.
together and be like, we're going to go attack this other country or this other place because we don't like those people.
Yeah, in the same vein of my comment about just using the nukes, it probably would make more sense if the whole world just got together and we're like, let's just eat the rich, like, and the politicians. But I mean, they're kind of one and the same. Um,
This is true, yeah.
like literally just like get rid of them. Like it's they they actually are parasitic. Like they are a threat
Yeah.
to, however much like collateral good might come of their evil actions, they are leeching off of the entire planet and all of its constituent,
Well, no, more in a lot of cases,
life
more than
forms.
that, they're like killing people.
Yeah.
In the case of politicians, like, they're a stroke of a pen ends
Mm-hmm.
100,000 lives, or more.
Yeah. And YouTube, I'm not saying let's kill politicians
No,
at
no.
all.
Well, in fact, that's probably the worst way to go about it. In my personal philosophy, indifference is the most powerful tool of revolution. If we just turn our back and don't give a shit, just stop listening, like they're talking and we're like, la la la, I can't hear you, then what do they got? They got nothing. The only power they have over the people is faith. That's it. That's all they have.
Well,
Like, it's
killing
only,
people is pretty persuasive too. Like
yes, it can be
they would
from
still do that,
from a
and they would
symbolic
probably,
standpoint, like the French Revolution or something. But of course, then it can get out of hand, and maybe your head's next on the guillotine. You know. Hmm. So
yeah.
it's like, I think I agree with like Martin Luther King and Gandhi and the likes of those people that nonviolent uh, resistance is much more effective and powerful. And in the long run, it has a better effect because it's like, well, you know,
Where has that actually succeeded though?
uh,
Like, are
the
there?
civil rights movement. There you go. Oh, it absolutely changed things, and with basically hardly a shot being fired, unless you talk about like the police or the military firing shots at protesters. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of, in like in the 60s,
Mhm.
there was a lot of people getting killed by the police and stuff,
But,
uh,
but the
just just for doing what you're talking about. Like,
just for sitting in a place,
yeah,
just for walking into a business and sitting in a chair, they were shot and hosed down and stuff like that. People walking down a
mm,
sidewalk, that kind of thing. But the optics of that, when everybody sees that, it's like, okay, well, who's the bad guy? Who's the obvious bad guy here? It's not the people who are just idly standing on the sidewalk. It's obviously these motherfuckers with the fire hoses and like the nightsticks, like beating people up and stuff. Like, yeah, who looks like a bad guy there?
how that's the trick though, the optics. How do you get a real look at what a country's government is doing? Like,
Well, the sad fact
it's so
is, like,
impossible.
well, like Chelsea Manning, all the leaked information about the shitty things the U.S. military was doing, like it's effectively war crimes, and people were like, eh. I mean, some people were outraged. Anybody, a common sense person with like a head on their shoulders, would be outraged seeing a lot of that stuff and reading about a lot of that stuff. But the general public, they were like, eh. And it's because of that faith. It's because people, no matter what, in the face of the most obvious, egregious actions that the people you check the checkbox next to their name, that like they're doing these bad, or basically they're not personally doing it, but they're ordering these things to be done, or being okay with these things being done, and like, oh well, but I love my country, that kind of thing. This patriotism is national,
Yeah,
like no
that was
matter
definitely
what.
a chess move. That was definitely like a brainwashing chess move to create all this patriotism and whatnot. I mean, like, actually, this reminds me of something I had been curious about this for some time. So I was asking my wife the other day because her her grandpa had served in the war, and we had recently went to a birthday party of her mom's, and he was telling a story about how he wouldn't have even been alive if some Russian general hadn't like had like a moment of compassion for his dad and stuff in the war. And I was like, is there any kind of like major guilt that those people in that generation lived with for being a part of the army that did all these horrible things? I mean, granted, most of them, like 99.9% of them, probably were just like, if I don't do this, I'm dead. Like they didn't really believe it. But still, like there's got to be like emotion that goes with that. Whereas on the flip side, America has this ingrained, brainwashed shit. Like, thank you for your service. Like no matter what they do in the name of orders and stuff, like Americans are brainwashed to think these orders come from like divine sources or something. Like it's really no different than a monarchy in respects to how we revere the military for doing whatever it is the state tells them to.
Well, swear allegiance to the flag, whatever flag they offer, right?
Right.
Um, Good song, by the way, "Silent Running" by Mike and the Mechanics. I love that song. Well, it's not, the U.S. is not unique in this regard. It's just one of many places where this is prevalent, and it's religious thinking. It's the same thing that goes back to the Crusades, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
people did really awful things during the Crusades, but it was justified because it came from, like you said, a divine source. Well,
Yeah.
God told us to do this thing, and
It's sickening.
it
It's
was your
sickening. Like,
faith that they were playing on, your faith in the church or whatever, that your beliefs, that these systems are playing on. They're pulling strings. Like you're a puppet of them.
Yeah.
And
Like,
those are the strings is your faith. And governments do the same thing over and over and over again.
I
And people
feel
just
like I feel like I tend to be a very nonviolent person, but I feel like governments are a tick, like burrowing into our our flesh.
Mhm.
And we're being told by the ticks, hey, if you want to get rid of ticks, you should ask them nicely. You shouldn't kill them.
Tweet out.
We sure we kill people, but that's okay because we're ticks. But
Well,
you shouldn't kill the tick. No, that's bad.
well,
But maybe we should kill the ticks. You know, like,
but the difference here is the tick only is burrowing into you while you're looking at it. And it's telling you to keep looking. The second you look away, the tick stops. It's our participation that is allowing these things to continue to happen. It's our faith in this kind of like our religious fervor behind politics and the system as a whole that's allowing it to continue. We're feeding, like there's a huge fire burning and everybody's throwing more wood on the fire, more combustible stuff. Like, you know what? If you just stop doing that, if you stop putting stuff in the fire's going to go out. Like,
okay,
all it takes.
if you ask anyone, what do we do?
Mm-hmm.
They'll say, we'll vote. Well, yeah.
That's the last
Tried that. Yeah. So, like,
no.
looking
Voting
the other way actually isn't working.
No.
Like,
voting
the actual definition of doing nothing is not voting, and that's also not working. So, like, of course, they keep killing you whether you're looking at them or not.
Well, there's more to the system than simply casting a vote. Participation requires a lot more than that. It's paying taxes. It's getting licenses for things. It's even watching the news when they talk politics. That kind of, any little bit of anything, even having a conversation about politics, that keeps feeding that fire. Like,
correct me if I'm wrong, but you can't like opt out of having taxes come out of your paycheck unless it's unemployment, right?
Well, you can if you renounce your citizenship in most countries, in most places. Mm-hmm. So if you're not, but that comes with some potential issues. If you are not a citizen of any country and you're residing in a country, but if, say, I don't know, a third of the population did that, well, there's not a lot they could do at that point. It's like, well, there's not enough cops to arrest everybody. There's not enough federal agents to deal with that situation. So that's one way.
I like how this is morphing into an episode about how to achieve an effective revolution with the least amount of casualties.
Well, I would recommend that you begin by reading Sun Tzu's Art of War. That would be a good place to start. But here's the thing. I believe in a brighter future. I want a peaceful, happy, productive, and safe future for humankind. For
I demand a brighter future.
Yeah,
that was a great David Bowie song.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I definitely was influenced, obviously, by Gene Roddenberry's vision, which I think is maybe a bit optimistic, but I think that it's like trying to get to the truth or achieve perfection. Like, yeah, we're never going to get there, but we can at least try, right?
Yeah, like the great thing about Gene Roddenberry's vision is part of that vision was trying to always keep some sense of reality, like as much as possible, inject as much real science into it, make it plausible, because that creates this idea that this utopia is plausible. And it is. It really is. Like, it is as simple as doing all the things that Roddenberry thought of, but it all like hinges on everybody wanting that, you know?
Well, imagine. So I've always said that the replicator is the key to that utopian vision. And imagine if instead of waging war and destroying, building and destroying everything in the course of that action, imagine if humankind put their heads together and developed new technology. Like 100 years ago, we might have actually had a replicator. Who knows? We all of that time and energy, all the resources, all the brilliant minds, it was all funneled into killing each other for fun and profit, you know? And
I
at
mean,
the end, like we all
that's
lose.
a good point. That's a good point because like all skirmishes kind of come back to coveting something, you know, like I want that. I want that. But if you had a replicator and you could have anything you want anytime, you're less likely to go like stealing shit or like beating someone up to take their lunch money or
Yeah.
you know.
And things like the warp drive too would facilitate people not worrying so much about land. Um, there is, for the amount of people who currently live on planet Earth, there is way more than enough land to go around. Way more. We're just going about it all wrong. And then we're fighting over it because we made stupid decisions about how we structure things. And like, oh, well, there's not enough space. It's like, the fuck there isn't. Look at the Burj Khalifa is like, what, 1.5 kilometers tall? Like, build a few of those and there's your housing, you know? And that only takes up a tiny footprint.
You remember SimCity 2000?
Yeah.
You would have those, what do they call them? Arcos or something?
Oh,
That
yeah.
were like,
Yeah. What was that called?
like the footprint was like 4x4 grid. They were super tall and they would hold like tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
So you could grow your population and like they were kind of self-contained cities on a city block.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. You could have an entire city housed in one block.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to build.
You don't even have to pack in that close.
No. People would have there would be people who'd have their own floor to themselves. Or maybe, you know, at that point, it's like, okay, well, the ones who want an economical style of living, they could live in these towers, but then there's options for people who want a little more elbow room or a little bit more nature, and there'd be nature for everybody. Like, well, instead of a bunch of single family homes, there's this huge park that everybody could just go to, right? There's more than enough to go around. It's just like we're going about it all wrong, and then like everybody is pointing to politicians to solve the problems and bureaucrats and stuff. And it's like, these fuckers don't know what they're doing. Obviously, look around you. Just look. Like they have no clue what they're doing. And yet we keep coming back to them again and again. It's like the religious figure that predicts like the end is near. The world's going to end in 2012. And then that doesn't happen. And they're like, well, it didn't end because this thing or that thing, but it's going to end in 2023, you know, and everybody keeps coming back. Like, why?
God had a donut in his mouth.
Exactly. Like, why do we keep believing that these people have the answers? They've consistently proven that they don't. In fact, quite the opposite. Like, things get worse whenever they make decisions and perform actions. So why are we following them? Why? That's the question. What we get is proxy wars. We get people dead. We get buildings and cities and homes destroyed and killed. And, you know, we just get destruction. We don't get creation. We don't get improvements.
The problem I see, though, is like this whole idea of like just ignoring the government. It's like, well, we already kind of live our lives that way. Like the government isn't intertwined in every second, every hour, or even every day of our being. So like, there's really no effect we could have even in huge amounts if we were just like, you know what, let's, you know, ignore the government or whatever. Because like by the time they notice or care, like they'd pick you off one by one here and there, like, oh, our quota for the IRS is to get this many tax evaders and blah blah blah, and we'll go for the rich ones first. So like we'll get around to these guys later.
Well, they would definitely do that as like a symbolic gesture, right? Because like
Right.
nobody knows who you and I are, but they would know who some famous rich person is, right? So if they went after Elon Musk, it would be front page news.
Right.
But okay, well, I would then ask, what gives the government power? What, like, how does it have power?
I think a lot of it does stem from the media. And I don't know for sure if they actually control the media and we just think they're privately owned.
The well, that's a
But
whole nother episode.
yeah, but
Project Mockingbird, look that up.
There's definitely like this well constructed, elaborate scheme of uh, effectively brainwashing the entire population. And the two-party system is basically like the underpin of which all of this is built on.
It's almost like sports ball, right? Like,
yeah,
this team versus that team, right? And it gets everybody riled up. And it's like, at the end of the day, does it really matter who wins the game of sports ball?
Like, it's all the same thing, all the same key players benefit.
Yeah.
In the end, no matter what, like a casino would have worse odds at winning than the government does.
Mm-hmm.
That should tell you something.
Well, but the point is, like, sure, the system initially could go after one or two people who just don't participate. But if millions and millions of people start going non-participatory, what are they going to do then? And then what if that snowballs and there's like 100 million people? Like, well, there's nothing they could do. They could like scream and yell all they want, and like, war, fight, order you to take, like what? And then you could just be like, like, okay, what now? What do you got? What's your alternative that you can do as a politician or a quote unquote leader? When the enforcers aren't even enforcing things.
What would be like a real interesting plot twist is if all these, like, I don't know how many there are now, like numerous amounts of cryptocurrency.
Mm-hmm.
Like if like at least the big players like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on, we're just like, you know what, we're just gonna kind of like convert this into a guaranteed UBI for everybody, and give people a safety net and say, you know what, just stop using the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
Give it up. Here, have some crypto, use the crypto. Like, if everybody has the crypto, businesses included,
mm-hmm.
like, of course they'll accept it because they have it and other people have it and other people want it and they want it. There you go.
That is
but it has to happen like that. Like, you have to basically say, oh, hey, I want you to use this, so here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Just give it out. Like, the UBI model is not a bad idea.
I mean, I guess in a certain context, no, but like one of the biggest reasons why a concept like that appears to be necessary is because inflation. But when you have like a inflation resistant system like crypto, Bitcoin in particular, there's a finite number of Bitcoins out there. And so you can't make more of them. So you can't have inflation at that point. It's a finite amount. And maybe you're right. Like, handing out a little bit to everybody would encourage people to actually use it. And businesses should accept that as payment. And I think imagine what would happen if nobody voted, nobody paid tax, no business paid their taxes, nothing, and people didn't transact in US dollars.
Yeah.
That would like nullify the government in the US. And
I think that's honestly the only nonviolent way
Mhm.
to eradicate the government is to just stop using their money.
Well, who controls the banking controls the country essentially. So this is true. Yeah. I mean, they basically, like, if you look at it, a lot of the things that people complain about on a daily basis, that, like you were saying, we're not really, the government isn't involved in our day-to-day lives, but they are. Cost of living is one of those factors. And yeah, like, they basically have everybody's balls, or even if you don't have balls, they have the equivalent.
In a butterfly effect sort of way, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're definitely like in everything. But I mean, that kind of just outlines exactly why it's time to get rid of the status quo.
I agree.
Like, not even just the government, like the economy itself has to kind of go, because, like, I mean, even when it comes to crypto being like finite, I mean, we thought that about the gold standard, and then we were like, hey, let's just do it this way instead. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, it's not anymore. I mean, like, somebody could just be like, well, what if we did make more Bitcoin, right? Like,
well, you can't.
There's nothing that at least in all that I've read, I can't see any reason why that couldn't eventually happen.
It couldn't, as long as you're using the current Bitcoin system. But of course, you can create your own crypto and pump and dump it. I mean, that happens all the time, but that's different. And you could do the same thing with pretty much anything. And it's like, well, those are the conditions that we have to accept as a possibility. There could be upsides and downsides to things, but what we do know, and I think what everybody can agree on, is that what's going on right now is not the best way to do things. Like, it is hindering our progress rather than accelerating it. We're essentially, in a way, worse off, even though we're better off, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean, that's all subjective.
Well, of course it is.
What better is, but yeah, I mean, like, it can't be the best way if there's so many problems, right? Like, I mean, you can't have a perfect system, but this is like so far from perfect, nobody would call it perfect.
No. It's we could definitely be in a lot better place. Like I was saying, what if all the R&D energy of every country in the world, instead of going to majority like war machines, was going to scientific endeavors or ways of improving lives and things like that. Imagine if the missing $2 trillion from the Pentagon's budget, which probably went to some black budget stuff, instead went to, I don't know, working on making a replicator or something, or warp drive. Like, for that amount of money, we probably would have replicators right now.
I mean, that if I wanted to jump into politics and run for president, I would probably say, you know what? I won't spend a fucking dime on our military, and no one will attack us. You know why? Because we're going to dump that all into research, and we will pledge to have that research benefit the entire world, friend, foe, or whatever.
Yes. If it's open source kind of stuff.
Like, let's just put this to bed. The US should be like, you know what, we're the world power, we're the world police, but instead of being dicks, we're going to help everybody.
Yeah.
And boom, there you have Roddenberry future. Like,
well, think about how a replicator would change things. If you could have an inexpensive device that could literally make anything out of anything else, well,
there was solve the garbage problem.
Yeah.
So like
waste, all kinds of, you could take nuclear
carbon
waste.
output.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, and hunger, um, like a lack of resources in other places. Like, yeah, you plop a replicator in the middle of some village in the middle of nowhere, and yeah, they can make anything. Anything solve
the
any
proton
problem.
drive we talked about in recent lightning strikes twice. Imagine using that technology to adapt it into like little mini personal mana machines.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody will ever be hungry.
Yeah.
Nobody will ever want for anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more reason for war.
There would not be.
Literally.
Yeah. Well, it is. Wars are largely resource based. For the U.S., it's maintaining the illusion of the petrodollar for the most part. That's why we get involved in those things, because, well, we all know the dollar is just vaporware. It doesn't actually exist. It's like it doesn't have any value. It's a faith-based system, but we got to prop that up, and anything that challenges that, well, we got to squish that, right? Because the second a challenger, what is it? Street Fighter 2, new challenger.
Well, I've heard that by 2030, the dominant world currency will probably be coming from China, not in the US.
Mhm.
So I would predict there'll be some reason to go to war with China before that.
If not directly, it'll again be a proxy war, and I predict that'll be Taiwan.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Son of a
That's the thing. It's
bitch.
like we got to stop feeding this beast. Just stop putting fuel like on that fire. Let the fire die down and go away. If you just stop putting stuff in the fire, the fire is going to stop burning. It's that simple. And but I mean, convincing people of that, because, like, well, I think you mentioned that there's been so much propagandizing to people, and building this up over like a century or two, at least in the U.S. That it's going to be hard to undo it. But I think the best way to undo it is a peaceful one, because that would speak to what we want to see. I don't want to see a world of warfare and death and destruction and suffering. I want to see a world where everybody has the things they need and we can live together in peace and harmony. Like, who wouldn't want that? Like, if you don't want that, what kind of asshole are you?
Yeah, I don't understand why, like, people think they're so different from one another. Like, we all want to thrive. We all want to be comfortable. We all want to do the things we want to do.
Yeah.
And like, why shouldn't we like not give a shit what the next person's doing? Like, as long as they aren't fucking with you, just do your own thing. Like,
exactly.
It's that easy.
Live and
it really is.
Well, and yeah, like, at what point, what is the factor, I guess, that contributes the greatest to human progress? It isn't conflict necessarily. It's when we work together. But yeah, sex and trade for sure. But it's when we work together, when we put all the greatest minds together towards some kind of common goal. That's when we achieve the most amazing things.
I mean, that is kind of sex, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah.
Working together towards a common goal. Like,
yeah. It kind of is. Okay.
Yeah, it is sex, right?
Hey, let's have a global orgy. Why don't we?